where is that fire in your belly? What are you passionate about? And when the light bulb went off for me about this topic, I was like, what can I do with my time and talents? 20-year career in the media industry, but also, as a mom, as somebody in my community. And so really just sort of starting to ask the questions and get involved. And that's really what led to learning about the composting program that we've rolled out now in the lunchroom at Jeremy Ranch, as well as all across Park City, adding new recycling programs. We added a teacher cleaning kit last year that uses non-toxic cleaning products so that we can get more of those into the classroom. So really just kind of like finding what your passion point is, what you're interested in, and then applying those skills to whatever it might be.
On today's episode of Empowered in Health, I have Anna Robertson here, and Anna is the co-founder of the Cooldown, and I am so excited for you all to hear her incredible perspective on how we can really clean up our environments as women, as moms, as families, and more. So Anna, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. It's just so awesome to connect with other women who are like-minded, passionate about cleaner living, passionate about how do we help the planet alongside our families. And that's really what our conversation is going to be about today. So Anna, I'd love to start with talking a little bit about just what motivated you to start to work towards a cleaner, more sustainable environment for you and your family. And what did that process look like in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think like many decisions that moms make, my decision was made based on sort of the health and safety of myself and my family, really. When I turned 40, a light bulb went off for me for a number of reasons. Number one, I was living in Los Angeles. We had a lot of wildfires. I was in an area where, one way in, one way out, and we were evacuated in the middle of the night from wildfires with the kids and out of our home for several weeks. And saw friends lose their homes to wildfires. And I was looking around thinking, this is bad. And a lot of people around me are not engaged in sort of why it's happening and what's happening to our planet. And a lot of that was because I felt like the content about climate was just really overwhelming for people, very focused on doom and gloom. And just really hard to kind of, it was easy to look away, right? And just say, oh, it's just a bad wildfire, but I could see it happening more and more often. Right. And then from a health standpoint, when I was 40, I got my first mammogram and I found out that I was positive for the BRCA2 gene, BRCA2 gene, as well as another gene that put me at a higher risk for certain cancers. And that was a real wake up call for me. And so I really wanted to think about ways that I could reduce my risk of getting cancer and my family's exposure to, environmental toxins and things like that, because there really is a connection between what we use on our body, the products we use, and the air we breathe on our own health. And so I started to educate myself really about the impact of a lot of the things. I had already been thinking about a lot of that stuff because I'd had challenges with getting pregnant and learned a little bit about it through, my journey as a mom. Because I think that's when the light bulb goes off for a lot of us. Like, what are we putting on our kids' bodies? What's in the diaper? All those things. But as I got, learn more about it, I felt like it was way too hard for moms to make good choices because they had to read the ingredient labels and look at everything. And it was just overwhelming. And so professionally, my background was in the media space, and I really looked for this sort of Venn diagram around what am I good at and how could I apply that to this challenge that I felt. How do we make climate and sustainability topics more accessible to mainstream people, right? Who don't have time to read labels or read all the research and science behind what's happening. And I realized there was really nothing out there that was digestible. And that's when I started thinking about, bringing my skills as a storyteller, my time and talents to helping people understand this and helping make it easier for people to make better choices for themselves and the planet.
So good. And I love that you speak to how your mission was really around how do you make this more accessible? Like, how do you make it more digestible? How do you make it feel more manageable? Because I know as a mom of 4 who is passionate about health, that is the thing that can sometimes feel so hard to manage is all of the information. Where do I even start? How do I simplify this process for me and my family? And how do I really know that I'm taking the steps that are actually going to make an impact? And so I love that that's a part of your mission and really a part of your story, that you wanted to make this feel a little bit simpler for women like me and for women everywhere who really want to kind of figure out, like, how do we clean up our environment and how do we do that in a way that doesn't feel quite so overwhelming? So that's so powerful, Anna. And I can't thank you enough for kind of sharing your story and your passion. I would love to move to talking a little bit about, the family unit or you as a mom. And when you reflect back to how you got started with kind of shifting into these changes, what are some of the most realistic choices parents and moms can make? And where do you start with trying to protect your family or, do better by the environment, et cetera?
Yeah, well, actually, the simplest thing that we can all do on this topic is to educate ourselves and to talk about it, especially talking about it with other moms. I know that sounds crazy, and it's not, it's not a big life decision, but it really is one of the most important things, because a lot of what's happened with the climate topic in general is that we all care about it. We're all concerned about it. If you look at any of the research studies, it shows most people are concerned about and understand that there's something happening, right? But many people are not taking an action or doing something about it. And so the more that we do something and then, share that with our community or a friend on a walk or whatever it might be, that's where we really start to see an impact. And so, it doesn't cost anything to sign up for a newsletter, to educate yourself. That's what I started to do, is just learning about it. And when I actually started digging in and understanding what was going on, I realized there's so many innovations that are happening out there that actually we have all the technology we need to solve the climate crisis. We just need to apply them. And on the side of, sustainable products and services, like, there are so many great products out there that require zero sacrifice and actually can help you live healthier and save money. And so those things are all possible. So I think, just educating yourself. We have, 5 newsletters we put out. You can follow us on Apple News, whatever it is for you. It doesn't have to be the Cooldown. It can be something else, but educating yourself and then talking about, hey, I found this great product, or I decided to change this or that. The other, some other big ones are just sort of reducing your stuff, right? Like, have a clothing swap, thrift. Like, my kids love, thrifting. They love getting, clothes that are hand-me-downs. And I think that's something that we as moms inherently do, because we want to save money, and our kids grow so fast that it makes more sense to just like get a hand-me-down or do a clothing swap rather than buy something new. And in the case of everything in our life, there's so many ways that we can do that, as well as think about how to get rid of our stuff responsibly. And that's another way that you can actually make money. Like, I get a ThredUp kit from ThredUp, and I put all my stuff in my garage that can be donated or that I don't want to donate here, and send it back. And I get a credit there to buy. So you can bring your stuff to Staples if you have old electronics or, crayons or markers or things like that, and you can get credits, at Staples. So there's actually like rewards in this stuff. And then a big one I'm really passionate about is reducing your food waste and just using sort of less food and meal planning and things like that, because it actually saves you so much money. I mean, I think the average family wastes about $800 a year just on food waste. I mean, it's like, I heard somebody say it's like going to the grocery store and getting 5 bags of groceries and just throwing 2 of them out, because we don't think ahead always about what's going to go bad, or how can I share ingredients and different recipes. And so like, that's really helped me to save money, but it's also just, it has a huge impact on the planet. And when your kids see you doing that at home and understand that you're, either not using as much food, or composting your food, which, we have here in Park City, and a lot of local communities have composting services. That's a really powerful way to have an impact in your own day-to-day life.
So many powerful nuggets, and honestly, things that I'm learning, which is one of the reasons I was so excited to chat with you, because I know there's always another layer to learning and getting educated, kind of like you talked about. And a lot of what you just shared, I honestly had no idea that these things existed. So I'd love for you to share, like, when you're talking about ThredUp, when you're talking about the Staples Rewards program, when you're talking about food composting, things like that. I know the Cooldown is obviously an amazing resource to learn about programming like this, but do you have any other resources or places where families can go and research? Like, how do I know what's in my community? How do I know how I can start to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we have a lot of articles we produce every day. We also have a guide. So when somebody reads an article, comes in about maybe a topic about gardening or thrifting or home renovation, we will put people sort of into a journey that can help them to make that decision easier. And then we also share, photos and tips from other people who've actually taken those steps, so that you can see like what EV they've bought or how the ThredUp kit worked for them or whatever it might be, because that is really the most powerful thing. Like, if your neighbor gets solar panels, you're more likely to get solar panels. Or if somebody else has recommended a non-toxic product and it works really well for you and your family, like I'm going to be much more likely to do that. And we hear so much of the time people saying, just tell me what to do, tell
Yeah.
me what to buy, tell me what to choose. And so that's a lot of what we do at the Cooldown. But there's so many great resources, whatever community you're in. Like if you just sort of, search, look for refill shops or great thrifting shops or, nonprofits that are doing this kind of work. There are resources in every community. I mean, you can even go on Google and search for any item that you want to recycle or see if there's, a way to put it somewhere else that's more responsible. You can, you just really have to start sort of asking the questions like, hey, where does this mattress go when I like throw it out?
Yeah.
Or where does this thing, end up? And like a lot of us don't take the time to do that. And it's not like I expect people to do that, but I do think, especially when there are like rewards involved and ways that you can, dispose of things, and make a profit or get a credit or whatever it might be, like, why not take advantage of that, right? Everybody wants to save money at this point. So I think there's a lot of great resources out there now.
That's so inspiring to hear. And I love that you're just kind of sharing all of these different things that we can start to implement and also get educated about. Because again, even I am like, this is blowing my mind, like all of the different things that I can start to continue to learn, because there's always another layer, kind of like we talked about. And, one of the things that I think oftentimes we experience as women and as moms, because we're managing so much in the home, out of the home, et cetera, is just this idea of like, how do I keep up? I feel a little guilty that I'm not doing enough, or I'm not staying in tune enough or educated enough about things like this for the environment and my home. What would you say to a mom that's maybe wrestling with that a little bit? Like she wants to make some changes, but she feels overwhelmed. She feels a little bit guilty. Like what is the steps she can take, and how can she kind of work through that narrative in her head so she knows like it's okay and that it's going to feel a little bit messy along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. And it's a huge reason why we started the Cooldown. Like, there is way too much guilt and shame. And, this is a textbook playbook for the health industry as well. I mean, you cover this all the time on your podcast and your content. Like, enough of making people feel guilty or shameful for health decisions that they've made, right? And it's the same in this space. There is just absolutely no need for that. And if people feel those feelings, they're never going to make changes that will be better for themselves and the planet. And so I think, part of it is just letting go of that and, starting somewhere. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. And it really can be about whatever interests you. Like if you like fashion and you want to go down the thrifting route, that could be it. If you're really interested in, makeup and you like to look great, like it may be getting curious about that and learning about the ingredients that are in your products. It could be just like very simple things like switching out plastic for glass. I mean, that is one of the biggest things that I think is really important. And you know what? We really want to just change the mindset from a place of guilt and shame to a place of empowerment, right? And making people feel like I have made a choice that is better for my kids and the planet. And instead of looking away from these issues because you feel overwhelmed or you feel like you can't sort through the information, really saying like, okay, I'm going to educate myself. I understand. I think now we're all beginning to understand. We're hearing about the impact of things like microplastics on our lives. Like we can't avoid microplastics, and I still have plastic in my home. It's not perfect. I still let my kids eat things that if I was like starting from scratch, I probably wouldn't let them eat. But, you have to like live a real life. And so even just taking your Tupperware and switching that for glass containers, we know now that it's really not good to use single-use plastic. So trying to get that out of your house, and especially heating plastic, that's a big one. It's just as simple as that. Like don't put a Tupperware in the microwave. That kind of thing can be one thing. And then you've got that, right? And you've checked that box. And I find in this space, it's sort of like, it builds on itself. Like, and even in the work that I've done in the community, we'll start with one thing and then people will start calling me and saying like, hey, I started composting. How about we get a rain barrel? Or how about we do like a greenhouse at the school? Or how about we recycle, plastics instead of just this or that? And so it kind of builds, and that becomes a really empowering loop to create. And that's the goal here, right? Is like, we nobody's perfect and nobody can be perfect in this space, But by making these little steps, we can really feel much more empowered about making the right choices for ourselves and our kids.
Yeah, small steps and feeling empowered. And that's really the key takeaway that I got from what you just shared. And I think women especially need to hear that over and over and over, because we do all get into our heads to a degree about what am I not doing enough of yet, or how am I potentially falling short, or how am I not getting educated enough about something. And then it can hold us in this place where we don't take action. And when you get into that headspace of really taking small steps and also realizing how much of an impact that can make over time and how that compounds not only in your family and in your health, but in the environment, like you said, it creates that loop, which is really the most powerful thing of all, because you want to see that ripple effect and you want to really see like how we can work together to, make a broader impact, which is why I love the work you're doing, Anna. And I just think it's really powerful for women to continue to hear these are the things that you can do. And we don't have to keep shaming and feeling guilty about the things that maybe you haven't gotten to yet. And it can be really small impacts. Would you quickly share a little bit more about microplastics? I mean, this is a big conversation. This is one of the things we started with in our home because it's felt like the simplest, smallest place to start. But will you just talk a little bit about not only the health impact, but just the broader environmental impact of microplastics? We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an early field, right? There's a lot that we don't know yet. I've interviewed a bunch of top scientists and doctors about microplastics, and the research is still very much in development. But what we do know is that microplastics are pretty much in everything in our environment, and they are accumulating in the human body. So, you'll see studies that have found, microplastics in the brain and in pretty much any part of your body. Yeah. And so, that obviously sounds alarming. It's concerning. We don't know for a fact what the impact of that is going to be long term. But I think that we can all, understand that we need to reduce our use of plastics in our lives. And microplastics, plastics in general, are made from oil and gas. A lot of people don't know that. But just from like a basic standpoint, they are made from petroleum-based products. And so, reducing your exposure to microplastics is good for your health. It also ends up a lot of times in our waterways and our water systems. And our water treatment facilities are working now to reduce and filter out a lot of the harmful chemicals that are found in microplastics. But we really want to think about, that as well, right? Like what you're putting in your washing machine does have an impact on the water supply and the soil and things like that. Yeah. So, all of our clothes are made of oil and gas. They're made of petroleum-based products like our workout clothes and all the things that are stretchy and all of that. So, I think from a health perspective, obviously switching to glass and aluminum, especially for your kids' water bottles, trying to reduce the use of single-use plastics when you're done with that plastic water bottle, getting rid of it rather than reusing it. And certainly not heating anything. Like, I don't put I don't put a lot of plastics in my dishwasher either. If you are going to put them in your dishwasher, putting them on the top shelf as opposed to the bottom shelf, because the heating comes from the bottom. And then, just like hanging dry more of your clothes, things like that can have a big impact. And, just trying to be conscious of the fact that our bodies are now exposed to these microplastics, and we need, hopefully we also need better just sort of regulation and policy around these things. And that's another thing I would say, in terms of the sort of like shift from guilt and shame to empowerment, is like moms and women in general have such an incredible voice that they can use. And by asking asking for these changes, for demanding that companies create products without plastic, or that your local shop is maybe switching from, using a plastic takeout container to, a compostable or cardboard container, something like that. Like just using your voice to say, I'm concerned about this, and I want my community to do better. We've reduced our plastic at the school, for example, in terms of what kids are using at lunchtime and things like that. Like you have a voice. And I think when you can shift and understand these issues and then start to really take those actions in your own community, that's when we can make a huge impact.
Yeah, thank you for sharing more about that, because I know, I've been learning a lot about microplastics over the past handful of years, more so on the health side, but the environmental side is a huge piece to the entire conversation, and it can really be a large problem from a lot of different areas of our wellness and our lives. And so it's so important to make sure we're getting educated, like you said, about what are these things in our environment? How are they potentially affecting us, our kids, our households, and more? But beyond that, like, what are they doing to our planet? And how do we make sure that we're being mindful of that so we can start to make different choices and be more involved in the ripple effect of what's actually happening around us? And so I just appreciate you kind of sharing more of that knowledge, because I think there's, like we've already said, there's always another layer to learn. And I think when we're talking in these conversations, like everyone has this different perspective of what they know or what they've been educated about. And so I love how you're just sharing your perspective, because I know that it will resonate with someone who maybe doesn't know these details or hasn't heard it in this way, and is going to learn something new about what can they change in their environment and in their lifestyle when it comes to just, being a little bit better, being a little bit cleaner and healthier, and just taking things in a small capacity, small manageable capacity, right? Anna, I know we've talked about this personally, not on the podcast, but we can talk about it a little bit today, just how the health and wellness space overall can feel really overwhelming as far as information. There's conflicting information. There's people with different opinions. Sometimes it can feel like, how do I make sense of which way I should go? Because some things are contradictory. I'm just curious if you feel that in the environmental space, and how you would coach someone like me or a mom through like making sense of some of the conflicting details that maybe come across, as far as how do you actually make an impact on the environment and more.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely feel that way. And a lot of it is also done on purpose. I mean, it's done to overwhelm us and to make us feel paralyzed, right? As you talked about earlier, I think when we feel overwhelmed and we don't have time to dig into all the research, like we often will just sort of like stop and like pull back. And that's not what we want to do, because it's not, unfortunately we do have to be educated, and we do have to understand these things to make sure that our kids and our families and ourselves are healthy. Right. And, hopefully at some point, a lot of, we'll have products that people use that are great, but it really does take sort of, understanding and empowering yourself with that knowledge. And certainly in the environmental space, that happens a lot, and it can feel really overwhelming. And I think that's where it's important to have, a community, that first and foremost. Like I'll reach out to you a lot of times and just say like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed about all of this news about whatever the health, thing of the moment is. And, just having some people in your life that can help you to put it in perspective, and experts, or, a lot of people reach out to me and just say like, just tell me what laundry detergent to buy, like what should I make of this? Like, how concerned should I be about this? I want to start composting, but I don't know how, or where should I go? So I think that again is like where, having that community connection and having places to talk about it is great, as well as, that is why we started the Cooldown, is to make it more accessible, make it more engaging and fun, and focus on some of the innovations and the really positive stuff that's happening, the people in their own communities that are taking matters into their own hands and doing like amazing things. I mean, every single day we're telling dozens and dozens of stories about people who are making change in their community in a really positive way, or about incredible new alternatives to plastics that are made from plant-based things, or all these innovations that are coming out. And that's really, fun and engaging and empowering to be a part of. So I think whether it's the Cooldown or other platforms, or people in your community who have, here in our community, we've got some great local shops, right, that are focused on, non-toxic products, whether that's, Dana at Free Living or the team at Fulfilled, like they have already done all the hard work for us. And so like, sometimes I'll just go to talk to Dana and be like, hey, what lotion should I use? Or how are you feeling about this or that? Or what do you think? And so I think that's, again, I would sort of go back to community and, and maybe like taking a pause if you do feel overwhelmed, and taking just a step back and saying like, what makes sense to me as in my instinct, right? Because we have such good instincts as moms and as parents. And even if all the science might be overwhelming, like, that this might not be the right thing to do, or this might not be good for your family. And so really taking a step back and saying like, how do I feel about this? Who can I check in with as my board of advisors or board of directors in my own life? Like, I have my own personal board of directors, and I pull people in who are experts on all different kinds of things, whether that's related to my career or my kids' education or the health decisions. And I think that's just like a great way to stay grounded, right? When information is overwhelming.
Yeah, community is everything. Community really is everything. And, I've learned so much from so many really educated business owners, health practitioners, people that are doing all kinds of variety of work in the health and wellness space, because health and wellness goes so far and deep. And so I love that you're talking about that, because that really is what it has to be. You have to build like-minded community. So you have resources where you can ask targeted questions, and you can talk about, what your concerns are, and they can guide you towards what really will be a beneficial change or a beneficial swap or whatever it is that you might be looking to make. And so I really appreciate you talking about that, Anna, because I think, again, we can get so into our heads. Everything feels overwhelming. How do I make sense of these details? And when you have dedicated people that you can lean on, and you have community that you can talk to, it really does make all the difference. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the Cooldown. I'd love for you to share a little bit more in depth about the Cooldown, a little bit more about the work you do. I know you've shared things here and there, but I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper and talk about maybe some of the things that are coming up with clean economy changes or new products that feel exciting based on some of the research and things that you've been learning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, we really created the Cooldown to be the biggest lifestyle solutions platform that's focused on climate and sustainability. And we reach about 35 to 45 million people a month. So that's like 1 in 8 Americans is now engaging with our climate and sustainability content, which is super exciting because, we're up there with like the top news and media platforms overall, just in general. So love to see that. And we started about 3.5 years ago. I partnered up with my co-founders who started Bleacher Report, sports site, wildly successful sports platform, to create the Cooldown. So they brought a lot of their sensibility about what works, what engages digital audiences, how to do something that's a little disruptive outside of, traditional media space. And that's really the DNA that we built the Cooldown around, is like, let's focus on the innovation and not so much on the doom and gloom. Obviously we do cover climate news and things like that isn't great, but we always attach a solution to every story that we cover. And we have, a huge volume of content that we produce. We distribute it on Apple News, Yahoo, MSN, Smart News, anywhere you can get your news, as well as on our own website. And we produce about 5 newsletters a week. So there's really, a great opportunity for people to engage in that content. We also, connect people with solutions that, with trusted partners. So that's a huge part of what we've been working on for the last year, is really, taking it beyond reading an article and helping people to take that next step with the guide that I described, but also creating partnerships with trusted solutions in the space. So whether that's, if you want to reduce your food waste or save money on your food bill, that might be Marty. Okay. So Marty is a website that you can go on and find reduced price groceries on like some of the hottest brands out there, like Simple Mills and True Botanicals. They also do beauty and stuff. And, it's all using surplus material or items that maybe change packaging, but they can't sell regularly. So you can save money that way. And then it goes all the way down to, from Grove Collaborative to, solar and heat pumps and heat pump hot water heaters. And I would say, like, in terms of what's most exciting coming up next in the clean economy is really like the shift in our homes to cleaner environments that are going to save us money and help us to live healthier. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but your utility bill is probably going up. Utility bills have gone up 7% in the last year. And, we have so much demand for energy in our country and our world. And so we're going to need other ways to create energy. And so, that's another area, like really focus on empowerment, because people are taking control into their own homes. I mean, in my home, we have solar panels, we're putting heat pumps in, we have a heat pump water heater, we have an electric vehicle, we have a backup battery. So our home can basically, be powered on its own, and we can see the data of, how and when we want to power it. When the power goes out in our community, we stay online because we have a backup battery that is powered by the sun. And so this is an area that is going to be a huge growth area over the next 5 years. People basically taking control of their own power in their own homes, and reducing their dependence on oil and gas and on the fossil fuel industry, because most of us, a lot of us have furnaces, or are dependent on fossil fuel driven electricity and all of that. So that is something I've done in my own life. I'm super happy to talk about what we have done, but also I think that's going to be just a really great area of helping people to be more energy independent and resilient in their own homes, especially as we face increasing extreme weather that makes those outages more common.
Yeah, and they have made them out more common. And we've been seeing that even in our own house, like in the past year or two, like we've just had more outages and we've had more issues. And it's a conversation that Dave and I have started to have, like, what can we start to change in our home? So we're more energy independent, kind of like what you said, we're more in charge of like, what are we using? How are we using it? How can we be more mindful? So I love that that's something that's really going to become more of an area of focus for families. And we can start to get educated about what we can change, because that's something that I know we are just starting to learn and are very curious about how we can continue to just be better in that area and learn more about implementing more on our own. Anna, the last thing I'd love to talk about before we kind of wrap up is you do a lot here in Park City. I'm so grateful to connect with you, and I love all the work that you do locally with our schools, with our community, and just really helping people go down this road of getting more educated. If someone wanted to do more in their community or change something in their schools or implement some of these programs that you've started to help us do, what would they do? How would they do that? What's the best place to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to where we started, right? Like, where is that fire in your belly, right? What are you passionate about? And when the light bulb went off for me about this topic, I was like, what can I do with my time and talents? Both my, I have 20-year career in the media industry, but also, as a mom, as somebody in my community. And so, really just sort of starting to ask the questions and get involved. Like, I called up the school and said, what are you guys doing on a sustainability front? Could I help in some way? Or, could I understand? Could I support? And that's really what led to, learning about the composting program that we've rolled out now in the lunchroom at Jeremy Ranch, as well as all across Park City, adding new recycling programs. We added a teacher cleaning kit last year that uses non-toxic cleaning products so that we can get more of those into the classroom. So really just kind of like finding what your passion point is, what you're interested in, and then applying those skills to whatever it might be. Like, we have a good friend who, is an organizer, right? So it's like, how can she use like reuse, things that are already in the home to be organizing containers? Or we have a friend has a, floral company, and she's composting all the excess, clippings and things like that. It's like, what can you do in your own life? And, if you feel like doing more, obviously this has become a huge passion point for me. That's where it starts. So, I think that, that's the main takeaway. And just remembering that, like, these decisions, like, as much as we all say we want to save the planet, and we've talked a little bit about that, right? Like making good choices for the planet or the environmental consequences, like this is about our own health. It's not about sacrifice. It's about, the reason I'm making these changes in my home is because I want a more comfortable home. Our heat doesn't work really well. I want to, save money on my energy bill. My energy bills this summer have been $15 to $20 a month. So, that's what motivates people, is making choices that are better for themselves, really. And obviously, if we can help the planet, that's a great secondary benefit.
Yeah. And I love how you shared, it doesn't have to be this massive sacrifice. Like, it can really be what feels aligned to you. How do you start to get educated, and what changes can you make that feel empowering, that feel like you're really starting to create this ripple effect that's going to show up in a lot of different areas of your life and your health and so much more. And I cannot thank you enough. This was jam-packed with so many nuggets of just powerful information, education, resources, and we will make sure everything is linked in the show notes. So whoever's listening can kind of listen in and kind of get to, learning more about all of these really important things that they can implement into their lifestyle. Anna, before we go, can you just talk a little bit or share where people can find you online, how they can connect, how they can potentially ask you questions and more?
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, thecooldown.com, you can sign up for our newsletters. Me personally, happy to answer any questions about anything I've spoken about, or if you need a place to start, you can reach me at anna@thecooldown.com or on Instagram. I'm Anna Rob. Easy to find me. Always feel free to reach out. And I just want to thank you, Erin, because the work you're doing here to kind of connect the dots between health and what's happening to our planet, and also the community you're creating here to give people resources is so important. I just love that sort of like empowerment mindset for everything we do, and certainly applies in this case. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for your kind words, Anna. And thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Make sure you check out the show notes for all the details on how to connect with Anna, the Cooldown, and more. Anna, thanks again for your time, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.